Hey, welcome to the Streamlined CEO podcast. I am your host, Carolee, an operations specialist, and this is a podcast for solopreneurs and CEOs with a team to understand how to streamline operations, be more efficient, and create more capacity. You know you want to do things differently in order to scale and reach your next milestone or goal. If you feel stuck on what your next move is to make things more streamlined, I assure you, you're not alone. This podcast is for you if you desire at least one of these things: streamlined operations, to be more efficient with your time, to add on a team member, to be able to trust your team members, and you desired bite-sized operational action steps, and you desire a more organized, efficient, and simple way to do business. Okay, so are you in the right place? Let's dive in. Hello. Today we are diving into part 2 of how to bring on a virtual assistant effectively. So where we'll be focusing is on one of the most critical questions faced by CEOs. What tasks should you delegate to a virtual assistant? So many CEOs understand the necessity of support, yet they often find themselves uncertain about what tasks to entrust to others. So consequently, they continue to shoulder the workload themselves. This predicament becomes problematic as responsibilities pile up, leading to overwhelming situations where things inevitably fall through the cracks. Eventually, this pattern leads to a state of burnout, which is a scenario that absolutely no one desires. So essentially, this leads to a lot of bottlenecks. That means you become the bottleneck when you are not delegating. Okay, especially as your business is growing. So delegating to a virtual assistant offers several benefits for you as the CEO. So one of the best things that it allows for you as a CEO is it frees up time to focus on higher priority tasks, or the tasks that only you can do, right? Those things that only are in your brain. The second thing is you can focus on more big picture things and the strategic planning aspects of actually growing your business instead of being like in the weeds, right? We can delegate those things. And the third thing is that this usually leads to less stress and overwhelm, which leads to a more balanced life, which means when you have a more balanced life, it means you're happier and business is growing, personal life is good, all of those fun things, right? So whether or not you're a seasoned delegator or if you're new to this whole process, there are consistent questions to noodle on each time you bring on a new team member. All right. Has anyone heard like the whole noodling on things? Like it's just something fun I like to say, like pondering, thinking, you know what, we're going to noodle on these things. All right. Every time you bring on a new team member. So the first one is, what are tasks that I can show a virtual assistant how to do? Okay. Some of them they might already know, but what is something that you're comfortable with sharing and showing to a virtual assistant if you were to hire someone on? The second thing is what skills or software experience do I prefer my virtual assistant to have? This is huge because this can help with the learning curve. It could be the difference between 30 minutes of training and 3 hours of training. All right. And the third thing is what am I willing to trust with someone else to do for me? What am I willing to trust someone else to do for me? This one's a huge one. What are you really able to like kind of let it go and, maybe just audit it at the end, make sure things are good, but you're not micromanaging the process? What are you good with entrusting to someone else to do? So there's those 3 questions that you need to ask yourself every time you're bringing on a new team member. So one was, what are tasks that I can share? Number 1 was, what are tasks that I can show a virtual assistant how to do? Number 2, what skills or software experience do I prefer my virtual assistant to have? And number 3, what am I willing to trust someone else to do for me? All right. But what tasks can you actually delegate? That's probably the next question. You're like, okay, great. Like I can answer those questions. Could you give me a starting point? Because the possibilities are endless, so I could totally get where you're coming from. But here are just a few examples. Some of the biggest things that I see a lot of people outsourcing are administrative tasks, right? These are like managing emails, scheduling appointments, organizing files, uploading video calls, things like that. Another thing is like content creation, right? Repurposing content, writing blog posts, editing videos. These are things that you absolutely do not have to do because there's resources available that you already have created that you're going to be able to give to a virtual assistant to help support you. All right. And those are just a few examples. And if you want a more comprehensive list, be sure to grab the PDF that's available in the show notes. So that way you can get a more in-depth list of tasks that you can delegate to a virtual assistant. All right. So here's another thing. SOPs, right? Standard operating procedures, while they're great to have in place to expedite this process, especially the onboarding process, it's not mandatory. Although, like I said, it will expedite the process. But alternatively, you can opt to teach your processes directly to your virtual assistant and have them document it for future reference. Okay. No one likes to write SOPs. Okay, unless you're that one or two people. I do know a few people that like to write SOPs. I like to write SOPs for other people. I do not like to write SOPs for myself. That's the hashtag ADHD in me. That's happening here. But that's okay. So those are two ways to do it. Have the SOPs already written and have your virtual assistant follow them, or alternatively, you can teach your virtual assistant how to do all of the things, which will ultimately take more time after the fact, and then they can document them to reference it for future use, right? And we're going to, and if you missed last week's episode, I highly recommend you taking a listen, because we covered the essential preparations required for bringing on a virtual assistant, like those SOPs. We actually didn't cover that, but SOPs are great to have. And the spoiler alert, though, this is the 3 things we covered: having a task management system, communication system, and a well thought out action plan for the quarter. And this significantly streamlines the process, along with those SOPs that I just mentioned. Okay, so there you have it. Delegation made easier. So tune into next week's episode for insights on ensuring, when you do hire your virtual assistant, that they love working for you. If you've made it this far, you're clearly invested in streamlining your operations and maximizing efficiency in your business. Remember, growth and progress often start with a desire for change, and you're already on the right track by seeking out resources like this podcast. I always like to hear from my listeners so I can support you, but also so I can continue to bring you binge-worthy episodes. You can always put in a topic request or reach out to me in the DMs. Remember, the journey to streamline success isn't always easy, but it's definitely worth it. So keep tuning in, stay engaged, and most importantly, take those actionable steps towards your goals.